Honkai Star Rail is Hoyoverse's newest game that, while fundamentally different from its blockbuster predecessor, Genshin Impact, borrows many of its systems and ideas and improves upon them in many ways, while simultaneously adding new ideas on top of it. Hi there, my name is Blossums, and today we'll be going over my thoughts on Honkai Star Rail, discussing what it does better than Genshin Impact, and hopefully answering the question that some of you may have as to whether it addresses some of the gripes players had with Genshin Impact. But first, let's discuss what the game accomplishes on its own 2 feet. The turn-based system is the largest departure and the very foundation of the game at the same time. It maintains the usual turn-based strategic structure with a solid point system where normal attacks gain points and abilities use points, that at a baseline make it very approachable and intuitive. Then it quickly shakes things up by allowing characters' ultimates to be used at any time, allowing for some real hero moments through defensive and support ultimates that can save a party at critical moments, or offensive ultimates that can ultimately eliminate an upcoming threat altogether, which layers very nicely on the initial simple concept, and it's further embellished upon through other interesting mechanics like the weakness break system that can open enemies up for attacks and deal varying status effects depending on the element used to break their toughness bar, which is a bar above their HP that you can use to break them and cause those weakness breaks. This, coupled with something like the speed stat that can shake up the turn order in varying ways, makes a very interesting turn-based system that makes you take a lot into consideration when building a team or character that keeps the combat fresh and interesting. Overall, if you're into turn-based combat, there's a good offering here, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. But let's briefly go over the story and the quest structure. The story is solid and doesn't strongly deviate away from the quest/story structure Hoyoverse has utilized in the past. Do a thing here or there and help a person out, become a big hero of said location. Nothing out of the ordinary here. If you played Genshin Impact, it's very similar. What does differ here, though, is the in-between. There's so many little things to investigate, and the little stories contained in investigating the surroundings are their own little expeditions and experiences in themselves. For example, like I was traveling around this one area, one of the first worlds, and I was just examining random trash cans, and I noticed I could keep examining them, and as I went along and it kept examining them, it kept giving me these little prompts, so to speak. It was kind of like a point and click adventure where it gave this whole like strange background to the trash cans and really hyped them up, and then I got rewarded with these things called praise of high morals that you can actually utilize in other random investigation things to get a little rewards, which is just very cool. Another cool example is during the main story, I noticed I could examine one of the dressers, so I did, and then my character promptly started talking about how cool the dresser was and how perfect it was, and then I had the option to go inside the dresser and just be there, and the screen went black, and then I had the choice to jump out at what was ultimately just a staff member and scare them. So there's a lot of cool little things to these little in-between experiences for the in between the actual quests and stuff. And I'd say these exist likely due to the lack of an open world here in Honkai Star Rail. There's less to physically explore, but as a result, there's more condensed in these spaces. And none of this is by no means required, by the way, but for the curious, it's certainly a fun aside. Narratively speaking, the game doesn't shirk here either. The main story is solid and interesting enough to keep the player asking questions as to what's coming next. It does have flaws though, especially in the explaining things department. Along the way, I've personally managed to put the pieces together, but it's not uncommon for me to feel out of the loop about a core world concept all of the characters seemingly know about and are speaking about, and I just don't exactly know what they're talking about. I don't know if this is due to me just not paying attention in certain parts and forgetting something that was said, or if they just genuinely didn't give context, but certainly something I've noticed along the way, and it happened more than once. And that's not to say I felt totally out of the loop, by the way. I was able to piece things together generally by the way that they spoke of them, but some things that I felt were important that weren't explained just kind of felt odd in some places. The side quests, however, feel great. They generally speaking have interesting storylines, and the stakes within them generally feel higher. It's kind of strange. There has, I believe, been more than one side quest where the person I'm helping has just straight up died. Spoiler for random side quests, by the way. Which brings me to another point. Your choices truly mattered. Well, Sort of. At the very least, the game does a significantly better job at making the choices you make feel like they led you to a different experience. There are some where the outcome does truly change, and some where they cleverly allow the choices you make lead to the same result. This is a significantly better experience than the often placeholder choices in Genshin that are your main character just saying one line split into two choices, which has always frustrated me and felt odd, and that is pretty much eliminated entirely here. Overall here, the writing is about the same level of quality, if not a little higher here in my opinion than Genshin Impact, but the gameplay experience that the story actually involves is significantly better. There are plenty of other merits here too, like the incredible world design. Hoyoverse has always done an excellent job making different places feel unique and culturally distinct, and Honkai Star Rail is no exception. But there are weird cases where they lazily slapped on like a PNG as like a three-dimensional space, or it was trying to look like a three-dimensional space in some areas, which is just kind of strange and random, it felt like. But in the interest of brevity, I'd like to move on from some of those points and talk about what I think a lot of people are likely waiting for, which are, of course, what Honkai Star Rail does the same as its predecessor, but better. What I haven't mentioned so far is how heavily this game actually borrows from Genshin Impact, which is in large the reason there's been so many comparisons to Genshin Impact. It borrows a massive portion of its systems and even the UI, to the point where if you're an experienced Genshin Impact player, you almost have no difficulty navigating the UI. It's nearly identical, which is not a bad thing to say. In fact, I think that's actually quite a good thing. It keeps things consistent, and then you don't have to spend a lot of time learning menus and stuff if you've already learned this type of menu, and I think that's actually quite a smart idea. But what are some of the straight up differences then? Well, first up and foremost, one of the biggest changes that'll affect you is the dailies are different from Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact has you go to an individual location to do an individual isolated incident to get your dailies done, and this is just simply not the case here. It is sort of in some areas, but it all works on a point-based system. You just have to get up to 500 points, and then you get your dailies done. And only one of these is a Genshin Impact type daily, where you go to a specific place and do a specific thing, and then you get some points for that. And that typically is worth 200 out of the 500. But you never have to do that one, and you could do a bunch of the others and get your dailies done that way as well. And the nice part about these dailies is a lot of them are just things you're going to do anyway, so they really don't interfere with your daily grind or what you actually logged on for in the first place. In fact, if you just log on and ignore this entirely, there's a high chance you'll likely get your dailies done without even looking at them. Other than that, this game also shares a resin type system similar to Genshin Impact, and the way resin's used here is a bit more sophisticated. One of the highest quality of life changes to all of this that many will notice right away is that you can teleport directly to any of the things that require you to use your resin or your trailblaze power, as it's called in this case. So you don't need to teleport to a nearby point and then walk over there. You can teleport straight to it. There's also a lot of interesting factors for some of the farmable materials where they have adjustable levels of the amount of the trailblaze power that you can actually use. So for instance, these golden calyxes here, I can choose anywhere between 10 and 60 of the trailblaze power to farm as many books as I actually want to, making this a much more efficient way to actually farm these things. And I can adjust accordingly for the amount of materials that I actually may need. And the same is here for the Calyx Crimson ones. You can't do this with everything though, like the Stagnant Shadows, which are this game's equivalent to world bosses. You have to fight these individually each time and consume 30 resin. This is also true for things like the Relics, which is this game's equivalent, as well as the weekly bosses. You can't just, farm multiples of these, you have to do them individually. And the weekly bosses have something here, which is another point I want to drive home here, is that the game is very good at giving you systems to eventually earn something that is relatively hard to earn. And what I mean by this is, we'll start with the weekly bosses here. They have the potential to give you these 4-star light cones, which is nice. The chances of these are relatively low, of course, but they also give you this currency when you do complete them, and then when you earn enough of this currency, you can exchange it for these 4-star light cones and get the ones that you want, as well as the copies that you want. And you see, we're literally a little over a week in, and I believe you need 200 to exchange for a weapon. weapon and I'm already halfway there. And I could easily earn more if I do some other things that we'll talk about later, but getting this really isn't that difficult, so getting these weapons isn't really that difficult either. They do cap you out at the 3 here, like Genshin Impact, similar to that, but let's continue on the point of slowly earning valuable items. So, similar to Genshin Impact, this game also has a shop, a Star Glitter and Star Dust shop equivalent. So whenever you wish, you get a little bit of Star Dust, and if you get like a character or like a duplicate or something, you get Star Glitter as well. These are called Starlight, which is the Star Glitter equivalent, and then Embers are the Star Dust equivalent here. So as you can tell, as you eventually earn enough of the Starlight, you're able to buy 5-star light cones. And these 5-star light cones, or the 5-star weapons, are the same ones that you can get on the standard weapon banner. So eventually you're going to be able to buy the one that you very specifically want, which is absolutely incredible. Genshin has never had a system like this. They allow you to buy some 4-star weapons in the Star Glitter, but never a 5-star weapon, and these will allow you to get those 5-star weapon stats and get the one that you exactly want over a longer period of time, which is just absolutely awesome. And it doesn't stop here either. There's something called the Herta store, which is a part of another gameplay system that we'll talk about in a little bit, but as you earn the currency from this, you're also able to buy 5-star weapons. Now, reportedly, these weapons aren't as strong as the like standard banner 5-star weapons, and some of the 4-stars, I guess, are slightly better than them, so they're not the best, and I'm sure the limited 5-star light cones or weapons are going to be way better than these guys, but you're still able to earn these 5-star stats and eventually earn them, which is incredible. This is just another avenue of getting those free 5-star weapons, and you can get their you can superimpose them, which is essentially the same as if you got multiple copies, to increase their effectiveness. And the actual wishing / warping, it's called in this game, is pretty much the same in that regard, to where eventually you can just choose whatever character you want, at least the ones on the standard banner. So you see, if I do 300 wishes here, I can just select the standard banner character that I want of my choosing, which is incredible. No longer do you just have to cross your fingers and hope you eventually get the standard banner character you've always wanted. It took me about 1.5 years to get Mona from Genshin, and I'm not going to have that same problem with characters that I really want from this standard banner here, which is incredible. So the game does have multiple systems to allow you to go ahead and eventually earn like 5-star weapons and light cones, which is super awesome, and eventually get the 5-star you even want. But it doesn't even stop there. If you take a look at the battle pass here, you'll notice that along the way, you're actually able to obtain something called self-modeling resin. I'm not sure if you can get this anywhere else yet, but when you do get it, this allows you to craft a 5-star artifact with your choice of set bonus and main stat, which is, this floors me as to how incredibly awesome this is. There have been several times in Genshin Impact where I've been farming for a specific main set on a specific set using hundreds of resin and not getting it. But here I can just eliminate that entirely. If there's one set piece that I just can't get my hands on, I'd be like, oh, thank God, I can at least craft it. Even if these only come up once in a blue moon, this is still an incredible change. And that brings me to the next point I want to drive home about this game, is just how free-to-play friendly it is. The free-to-playness of this game is actually kind of crazy. I'm sure this will change as power creep gets introduced or something, and the limited characters will just be insane, and, you know, there'll be more content or something, but for now, the free-to-playness of this game is actually crazy and super strong. In fact, a lot of the characters that I have, the free-to-play characters, are the ones I'm using to clear some of the harder content that I've encountered, just because their kits are more useful for the particular situation. A really good example of this is the free-to-play character Natasha is the free healer that they give you, and there's only one other healer in the game. It's a 5-star healer, and this 5-star healer does more healing than Natasha with her kit. However, there are plenty of circumstances where I've needed to use Natasha over this 5-star healer Bailu, because Natasha has a unique aspect to her kit where she can cleanse a debuff from your ally that she actually heals, and this has been more useful in a bunch of scenarios, and I've chosen to use her over Bailu in several scenarios as a result. And this is true for plenty of other characters too. Don Hung, one of the very first free-to-play characters that you get, I've had to use him in multiple occasions over the 5-star character of the Hunt path that I've had as well, just because his element is better, or maybe the speed reduction that he gives is a little bit better for that scenario, and it's been more helpful in those different scenarios. So the fact that they smartly made these kits to where they matter for different scenarios, or their element matters for a different scenario, is incredible. And they give you plenty of free-to-play characters, by the way. The ones in this current party are all free-to-play characters that they give you. Herta, even, especially, they give you multiple copies of as you complete one of the endgame content things that we'll talk about in a little bit. So you get her eidolons for free, but then not only that, we get characters like Asta, we get characters like Qing Shui, and we get characters like Serval, we get characters like March 7th. These are all entirely free characters, and they are all very useful. Which, as I said, just goes to show how free to play this game is, at least so far. It's been super awesome, and I like a lot of the kits of the free characters as well. They're very interesting, which I think is great. But let's talk about some of the end game now. So this game has two forms of endgame so far that I've noticed. The first one is the one behind me, which is going to be the one that you're likely going to be in the most, which is Simulated Universe. This is where the Herta store is that I mentioned before, where you can earn these little things to buy a 5-star light cone. And essentially the way this works is you go through different worlds, and it is a roguelite type game mode where you go through, you get different buffs, and you get different abilities to amp up your characters in different ways. And as you go along, you earn different rewards. And on your first time clear, you get a pretty hefty amount of rewards. There's the Herta Eidolon that I mentioned before. But then you also get other rewards that are artifact related. These are the other types of artifacts that you can get in the game. So there are the 4-piece sets similar to Genshin Impact, but then they add 2 other artifact pieces that you can get that have their own 2-piece effects. And these have varying degrees of usefulness as well. And you can farm these in the simulated universe. So you're going to be here a bunch just for, you know, the fun of clearing harder content, as well as just farming efficiently. And you notice some of these, this doesn't take resin at all, by the way. Getting the rewards here does. Let me correct myself on that. Getting these like relics and stuff do take resin, but these top rewards, which are actually fairly useful rewards, especially this relic XP one, does not take any actual Trailblaze power. This game mode is also immensely rewarding as you go through and you gain different blessings, which are the buffs you get throughout it. The more you earn, the more of these crystals that you get for unlocking and using the different ones, encouraging you to try different playstyles and going for different types of builds as you run through these, which I think is incredible. This is an incredibly well designed game mode in my opinion, and as long as they keep building upon it with the blessings and stuff like that, as long as they're giving more rewards like that, this is going to be a better endgame than Genshin Impact has ever had. There's also these things called curios, which are like little artifacts you can get to buff your team in interesting, unique ways. And as you try different ones of these, you also get rewards. So that's very cool as well. As you try more and more, you just get rewarded. So as I said, it really encourages you to try different playstyles in the simulated universe. This also looks like it's going to go on for a little while. I mean, there's plenty of things to do, and I've gone all the way to floor 6, which is what I can do right now. But as you can see, there are multiple levels to floor 6, and they can easily create more as well. So there's plenty to do here, and I'm really excited for that. Also, this has a weekly reset of rewards that you earn. Whether you win or lose in this roguelite, you get these points. And as you gain points, you weekly get these different rewards. And you'll see there's even a wish on here and some other stuff. There's some talent level up materials and the actual little icons that you can use. These little condensed circle things here, you can use those to actually get the artifacts as a drop as well, instead of using your Trailblaze power. You can also condense your Trailblaze power into these to use in here, so that's very nice as well. But this isn't the only endgame. In fact, there's another one that is a lot more like the Spiral Abyss that you're actually used to, and this is actually where you turn in that currency that I showed you earlier to get the 4-star light cones. But when you go in here, you'll see this is very similar to Spiral Abyss. You clear these different floors, and if you get 3 stars, you get all the rewards for doing things in a specific way. So you got to clear it the most efficiently. However, you might notice there's a limit here of 15, and after you earn all these stars, you get all these rewards. You're like, okay, well then what? Well, it turns out another whole system ends up unlocking in the top right corner here, and there's actually a reset on that particular one. So once you complete these, it is just like Spiral Abyss, where like floor 9 through 12 reset every so often. There's going to be that in the corner. So not only is there the simulated universe endgame, there's also a basically the same as Spiral Abyss endgame here. So there's multiple avenues to that, and as long as they keep updating those properly, then we're going to have plenty of options. So you can see there are multiple endgames here, and as long as they keep regularly updating them and adding more, then we're going to be eating a lot better here in Honkai Star Rail than we have so far for Genshin Impact's endgame content. One last thing I wanted to go over is my potential worries for the game. Of course, this is a gacha game, and it could easily run into the problem many do, where the power creep is just a little too hard. Now, luckily with Genshin Impact's record, I'm fairly confident Hoyoverse can manage that, but still a concern nonetheless. There's also a small content concern for me. I hope some of the spaces they create have a little bit more exploration to them than they do now, as the spaces here aren't open world. Like I mentioned, they're much more linear. There of course isn't as much exploration, but the spaces you do visit are all related to the story in some capacity, with a few off the beaten path type areas that have rewards here and there, but I do wish there was a little bit more. I hope they make more areas that are just their own zones, or maybe more comprehensive off the beaten path type routes than they currently do, as I feel they could have a little bit more than they just do at the moment. This also brings up the update cycle for the game. Hopefully it's frequent enough with new zones, which will hopefully be easier since it's not open world, but the frequency will certainly be important. Events in general are also somewhat in the air at the moment. The Freedom Genshin allows for a lot of interesting event types, but that isn't really found here, which hopefully means we'll get more combat-oriented events, which I'm all for, but they haven't announced any yet, so that simply remains to be seen. Same with the other endgame systems I've brought up, like Simulated Universe and the Forgotten Halls. Those will only continue to be as fun as they are as long as they are refreshed with some regularity, and hopefully they're able to make that happen. That's pretty much it for my concerns, and that's going to be pretty much it for this video. As I said, I've been having an absolute blast playing this game. It is a ton of fun, and hopefully you guys have been playing it too and having a lot of fun. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on Honkai Star Rail, if you like it a lot or if you don't like it. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to be able to get past the turn-based system. A lot of people like action-based systems more, and that's totally understandable. But for me personally, I'm really enjoying this game, and I'm really excited to make even more content about it. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.